Hey YouTube, it's Ainigma here. So this is our 8th session in Road to Cat VARC Explain series. This is a society and culture based RC. As usual, I will provide the PDF of the session in the comment section below, so you can try this at yourself, and then you can say look at the solution. And so this is our RC. On days when I feel discouraged by the kinds of cultural objects I encounter, I try to remember a few things. First, pop culture is not all culture. Upon deeper reflection, I realize that while media companies reward narcissism, shallowness, an empty spectacle, hyperbole, and brainlessness by giving disproportionate exposure to things that generate easy attention, there is another coexisting world, one in which thoughtful, intricate, and uplifting things are being created at an unprecedented pace. So, author is saying that although he feels discouraged by the kinds of cultural objects he encounters, specifically, he is trying to tell about the pop culture. He's saying that he is not fond of that culture. When he goes on to deeper reflection, then he realized that actually media companies rewards narcissism right now. They reward shallowness. They reward, you can say, empty spectacle. Like something which has no inside no deep meaning. It's just for a show. It's a hyperbole and brainlessness. So these are extremely negative word for, you can say, pop culture. So author is having a negative opinion specifically regarded to pop culture, and more specifically about media companies which reward these activities. But author then also, you can say, shifts his tone, and author says although this is true, but there is another coexisting world in which thoughtful, intricate, and uplifting things are being considered, which means like genuine things are being rewarded as well. So that's the author's take. First he goes to negative, you can say, he starts with the negative vibe and then goes to a positive, intricate vibe towards the another culture. So maybe he will explain that culture. Let's move on. Indeed, there is a surplus of extraordinary objects that illustrate and celebrate the full range of human ingenuity. So he says that there is like around us there are surplus of objects which actually celebrates human ingenuity. Excellent culture, things that would have blown the minds of our ancestor, still exist all around us, but has simply become harder to find. Author says that the excellent culture, he is like just reiterating the idea again and again, that excellent culture is around us, but it has become harder to find. It's elusive. The analog and digital worlds are glutted with cultural artifacts, many of them produced more and more frequently by amateur and hobbyists, and we have far more to wade through to find what suits our taste and feels like some form of aesthetic progress according to our individual standards. So author says that that the analog of digital, due to like what is, you can say, harder to find, like the what author says before that you can say excellent culture is specifically harder to find, and the analog of that is actually digital world, and you're where like many of the artifacts are there which are produced by hobbyists, or you can say amateurs, and you have to actually wade through that. You have to find your way in order to find the real thing which suits your taste. Second, those cultural artifacts that strike me at first as too basic, derivative, or uninteresting surely contain a simple truth worth acknowledging. Sometimes the human brain needs something soft to chew on, especially in difficult times. There is something comforting and therapeutic about the loop of a no frills beat, the repetition of age old platitudes, familiar plot lines, and modest shapes and colors in configurations we recognize. So, author says that all, like the second thing is that author state first thing, like he starts with the pop culture, and he says like we are surrounded with we are living in a world, or you can say in media companies which provide narcissism and everything like that. Then he says on, but there is real culture which is harder to find because we are surrounded with all those things. But then on, that's the first take of author. Then he secondly says that although those culture artifacts, although we are surrounded by this, but there are some simpler artifacts also which, you can say, at first glance it may seem simple, but they are not so bad. Sometimes you don't need, you can say, intricate beats, or you can say something exceptionally complex. Sometimes simple things also give you the pleasure that you want. So it's not always, the author repeats that it's not about, sometimes the human brains need something soft to chew on, which means it's it's easy, especially in difficult times. It's preferable if you can go with simpler or basic things. There is something comforting and therapeutic about the loop of no frills beat, which means like it's not you're not listening beats, like high end beats. It's just like a singular tone. That's also okay. Repetition of age old platitudes, which is like similar cliche again and again, a familiar plot line, and modest shapes and colors in configuration we recognize. So it's pretty okay if you are surrounding yourself with basic things also. That's the author's take. Must every piece be a masterpiece? This is a rhetoric question. Obviously, you can say this. The answer to this question would be no. No, we don't need every piece to be like masterpiece. Then he answers it, hardly. It is best to surround oneself with cultural objects of varying complexity and purpose. So we need to surround ourselves with, as an object with, you can say, which have varying complexity and purpose. Sometimes we need objects that challenge us. So we need. Sometimes we need some objects which challenge our perception towards what we view art as, and other times we need objects that just let us coast, which means anchor ourselves to peace. That's the specific take of an author. So let's start with the second paragraph. Finally, it is possible for a person to be democratically minded while still having standards that separate the excellent from the mediocre. So author says that it is possible for a person to be democratically minded, which means he is able to allow everything to be existing at a place, and still you can say and still he has the same standards. As you can say, he is able to separate what he thinks that it is a good art, and what he thinks that probably this is not a bad art, this is bad art. There is something quite anti-democratic about flattening all differences between cultural objects, disregarding the extra work and exceptional talent of some of the world's most creative citizens who bring pleasure and beauty to those who know how to see it. Author says that just because you don't like something, it is it's not democratic to just flatten everything. This is not of my culture. I will give you an example. Let's say if I'm in Italy and I like the pizzas that Italians are making, and I think probably this is something which has been culturally driven up to this, and I go to America, or you can say Japan, and I see those pizza contain something which is different. So I can't just flatten out itself like, look, this is not on my culture, I don't want this to existing. That is anti-democratic. You can have your standards that maybe this is the thing, this is culturally suitable, or this is something which I can say profoundly, this is art. But at the same time, you can have your opinion, but it is anti-democratic. Just flatten everything into just one thing. You can't see everything with just one lens. You have to have open possibilities, or you can say different facets of life. That's probably the author's take here. All people's tastes should be accommodated, even the demanding ones. So he's here demanding ones is used in a negative sense. Like all people's tastes should be accommodated, even the demanding ones, which means who are you can say who nitpick and everything. There might be some person who will like bother you with every little thing, like I don't want this, I don't want that. So even those people should be accommodated. That's the author's take. In a real democracy, one can like or dislike freely as an individual possessing a complex set of identities and affinities. Okay, one is free to be a snob or to be like everything undesigningly. So this is specifically, you can say that in a real democracy, everything can be existing. Like everything should exist. That's the author's take. And one can actually are free to like, and what he is disliking. And the end author is saying one is free to be a snob. Like arrogant person who says like art is only this, or to like everything undiscriminately, which means like he is liking everything, even simpler things. He is not bothered with like he always likes like grand things or simpler things. He is fine with everything. So one can be any of those two persons in a real democracy. Let's return to the original question motivating this essay. Can culture degenerate? So author is saying this is the motivation that he has written the essay, is that can culture degenerate? Can this culture degenerate? As I pointed out in the beginning, degeneration is a metaphor. So in this respect, culture cannot literally degenerate. So author is saying that he has used the culture as a metaphor. So culture actually cannot degenerate. But if we translate the sentiment expressed through this figurative language into something more literal, can culture become worse? So author says, although I have used this as a metaphor, but if I use this in a sentiment which is expressed through a figurative language, then you can say my real intention is, can culture become worse? That is the question that author is asking. Several new questions arises when you view it like that. Then several new questions arise. As I type, there are millions of micro phenomena being produced that could count as culture. It is plausible that they would all simultaneously find themselves in a state of degradation compared with their earlier counterparts. So author is saying that the main question he is asking that if you view that the question that rather than viewing the question that like can culture degenerate, author himself negates that question and he says author cannot that culture cannot degenerate, but can culture become worse? Then author's take on this is like, as he's typing, he goes on to explain that as he's typing there are millions of, you can say, micro phenomena that are being produced. Let's return to the original question motivating this essay: can culture degenerate? So author is going back to his original culture. What's the motivation of writing this essay? Can culture degenerate? As I pointed out in the beginning, degeneration is a metaphor. So in this respect, culture cannot literally degenerate, but if we translate this sentiment expressed through this figurative language into something more literal, can culture become worse? Several new questions arise. So author says that the underlying motivation, or you can say the original question which is motivated him to write this essay, was, can culture degenerate? Then author goes on to answer his question itself, that culture cannot degenerate. But the real question, if you can say portray this question in a manner, so the underlying notion becomes, can culture become worse? And if you ask that question, that several new problems arises. Then we see, as I type, there are millions of microphenomena being produced that could count as culture. Is it plausible that they would all simultaneously find themselves in a state of degradation compared with their earlier counterparts? No. At any given moment, across the vast spinning orb on which we live, artists, writers, and thinkers are producing rudimentary objects and complex ones, artifacts that take no particular skill or thought to make, and others that require specialized knowledge and years of training, reflection, and preparation. For each taste, there are objects and ideas to accommodate it. They are hiding in plain sight. So, author says, then if you think about this, can culture become worse? So, then author goes on to explain, as he is writing this essay, there are millions of microphenomena that are going on, and they are in a culture itself. And if you compare their microphenomena, let's say right now as I'm speaking, something is occurring, there is some sort of culture that is being produced. So if you compare that culture to the previous one, is it that the culture you can say become degraded? Is not like that. The culture would not degrade. Yeah, the first thing you have like I will give an example or analogy that you can understand pretty well. Right now we are saying that AI has come and it might replace a lot of jobs. That's the kind of notion that I hear people a lot, that AI might replace a job. So would you say that the people of the earlier times have said, like if you visit your old parents, or you can say your grandparents, they say that right now that things are become much worse. Well, things are not become actually worse. The culture has changed. Time has went on, and you can say things, if people are not able to adapt, they might think that things have become worse, but actually you can say there has been a gradual shift in how people used to live. So that's the thing, culture has not completely wiped out. If you look at the India right now, and India how it was 20 years ago, it's still India. There is still some parts of culture which have changed, but the root is still there. That's it, isn't it? So we are not saying that like the culture cannot just wipe out himself. That's the thing that the author is specifically making, that here it is. No, at any given moment, across this vast spinning which we live, artists, writers, and thinkers are producing rudimentary objects and complex ones, artifacts that take no particular skill or thought to make, and others that require specialized knowledge and years of training, reflection, and preparation. So he is saying that it's not like that culture will disintegrate, and there are people who are creating objects which takes no skill at all. It is actually rudimentary, and there are people who are it takes like years of practice in order to make that stuff. So for each taste, there are objects and ideas to accommodate it. So everyone has different tastes, and everyone has different ideas to accommodate it, and they are hiding in plain sight, and they are actually hiding in plain sight. So that was the take of this passage itself. I hope that this is specifically clear. There's nothing which is extremely complex. Might be one of the things that you might be stuck is this passage, because this is probably the only, I can say, hardest line regarding this metaphorical question that he asked: can culture become worse? After that, it's pretty easy. So let's look at the question itself. The attitude of the author towards the subject is best described as biting criticism. Author is one thing, is that he is not criticizing. He has already criticized pop culture. Apart from that, he is not criticized everything. So criticizing, biting criticism is not an option. Implied contemplation. Contemplation is about thinking about something. He has actually made us think that what you are calling as culture degradation is not culture degradation. Culture is not degrading. Culture is not degrading. That's the thing that is the whole highlight or the emphasis of the passage itself, that he has presented some argument and it is making us think, it has made us think about that thing. So implied contemplation can be a specific answer. Let's check further. Poignant derision. So poignant is specifically sadful and derision is ridicule or mockery. So there is no mockery of something, and there is it's certainly a bit, although you might feel, some people might feel sad while reading the essay, but the essay itself is not sad. So it's not poignant, and specifically it's not derision. Then we have fervent introspection. Now this might seem an alluring choice to you, because introspection means you have to analyze something. If you are looking deep depth inside your own psyche, that you're introspecting about something. Let's say if you have a like the notion of success, that I can achieve success only through this, and then you realize that success is not specifically deemed of only by choosing this path. Also there are numerous other paths. Then you realize that by introspection, then you realize that maybe this is not something, I was living in a very narrow minded place. So that is introspection. Although if there was an option which had a better adjective, because fervent here makes this option extremely wrong, because fervent is extremely zealous, extremely passionate person, and one more, if you go above this can be fanatic, fervent, zealous, fanatic, passionate person. So fervent is you know expressing a lot of, you can say, enthusiasm. A person who is extremely fervent, a very zealous person, very enthusiastic person, very passionate person. Author is not passionate about this. There is no adjective that is being used that he is extremely passionate or energetic about this. So that's why D is not an option as well. So the only option that we have left is B, implied contemplation, which is the correct answer to this. So let's look at the second question now. The primary purpose of the passage is to. Now look at this. What was the primary purpose of the passage? When we remember, whenever the primary purpose of the passage comes, the examination comes, you have to always check the first paragraph and you have to always check the last paragraph itself for solving such questions. Now we know the primary purpose of passage was, the author starts with, you can say, pop culture. He goes on to say that pop culture, he is not fond of pop culture. Then he introduces that art or culture, that we are surrounding ourselves, the like good things, good art, excellent art or excellent culture is hard to find. We are there are plenty of things, but that we can say excellent culture, which belongs to excellent culture, but they are hard to find. And then he says that simpler things, specifically, it might seem that simpler things are rudimentary and you should not consider them as art, but sometimes simpler things also give you the pleasure that you want. Then he goes on to say that art is not degenerating, in the last paragraph itself, that art itself is not degenerating, it's just a metaphor, and art is not actually becoming worse as well. Art is not, culture is not becoming worse as well. Culture is not degenerating. That's the specific underlying notion that he contains. And he says that what a rudimentary, what perception of art, like what a kid is producing, specifically here, that here it is. Not any given movement across this vast spinning orb in which we live, artists, writers, and thinkers are producing rudimentary object and complex one, artifacts that take no particular skill or thought to make, others that require specialized knowledge and years of training, reflection, and preparation. So there are people who are producing complex art, and there are people who are producing extremely rudimentary art as well. For each taste, there are object and ideas to accommodate, and each person has different taste and they have different ideas, and for everything that you're doing, world has place to accommodate it. They are hiding in plain sight, and these things are hiding in plain sight. That's the author take. So the primary passage should be dealing with these ideas. That's the key take that we have to take. Explain the misconception of degenerate art and literature. Do you get the sensation that there is some sort of misconception about degenerative art and literature? First thing is that art is not degenerative. Art is not degenerating. That itself makes it wrong. And second thing is that misconception. There are no misconceptions about art. There is no misconception. Nobody has said that this is something wrong. Nobody has purposefully deceived somebody. So this option goes out the window. B, provide information about the perception of people on cultural degeneration. This could be an answer. I will say definitely I can put this to be an answer, because certainly the passage is providing us information about what people perceive about the cultural degeneration. Author, although it's not just about information, but that's the thing that is biting me here. Author is just not providing information about the perceptions of people about culture degeneration. But if we don't find anything which is close enough, then I will take the answer and just move on. Highlights the flaw of judging the cultural and societal transformation. Now, comparatively to this, C is a better option. Why? Because it is actually because this passage actually highlights the flaws of judging the cultural and societal transformation. We are actually, you can say, highlighting the it is highlighting the flaws. Author is saying the culture is not degenerating. This is something which is fundamentally flawed. People are thinking, but culture is not degenerating. That is the specifically thing. Culture is not getting worse. So he is highlighting the flaw of judging the cultural and societal transformation. All the society is transforming, and people are, you can say, society is transforming, culture is transforming. As I said, the author mentions here, if you remember here, as I type, there are millions of microphenomena being produced that would count as culture. Is it plausible that they would all simultaneously find themselves in a state of degradation compared with the earlier counterparts? No, because culture is not getting worse, it's just getting transformed. So, the main point is this, that people are thinking that, you can say, cultural and social transformations are equivalent to cultural degradation, but culture is not degrading, culture is not getting worse, and he is highlighting the flaws of those. So that's why C is the best option accordingly to B. If I don't find D to be alluring, then C would be my answer. I can specifically cross B. Analyze the factors leading to culture degradation. We are not analyzing the factors of culture degradation. First thing is that culture is not degrading as well. Culture is not degrading, and we are not analyzing the factor. What is causing cultural degradation? This is also not mentioned in the passage. So D is not the option. C is our answer. Let's look at third question. All of the following can be inferred from the passage except. So three things can be inferred from the passage and one thing cannot be inferred from the passage. That would be not accordingly to the passage. We have to tick that option. Real democratic culture won't allow you to be arrogant in the matters of art. Specifically, gladly enough, this is our answer. We know that we have, just go back and look at the real democratic culture we have came across. This was in second paragraph, isn't it? So, in a real democracy, one can like or dislike freely as an individual possessing a complex set of identities and affinities. One is free to be a snob or to be like everything undistingly. So, if you are in a real democracy, you are free to choose anything. If you are a snobbish person, if you think that, okay, like high-end stuff is the only art and culture, then you can choose that. If you are a person who thinks that pricey things are also fine, but simple things also contain those meanings, so that is also fine. That is real democracy. And what the option has said, real democratic culture won't allow you to be arrogant in matters of art. No, real democracy allows you to be arrogant in matters of art. So this is our answer. Let's check for second, third and fourth, although we definitely know that A is the answer. Human brains prefer variety when it comes to art. This is specifically true. Author has said in the first paragraph itself, if I remember, last third line or last fourth line, must every piece be a masterpiece? Hardly. It is best to surround ourselves with cultural object of varying complexity and purpose. So that was the line that is specifically mentioned here. So this is definitely not the answer. There are more tools to create and distribute the objects of arts than ever before. Yes, because we know that author has said that there are hobbyists and amateurs are producing things which are at an unprecedented rate. So it can be inferred from this also. So this is also not, you can say, the answer. The naive lines of a child's drawing tap a primordial element of the human mind in ways that academic art in advanced form produced by trainee arts never could. So what does this complex lines means? This means that there is a child who is naive and he is drawing up a primordial element. Primordial is, you can say, it's a rudimentary or extremely basic thing. He is drawing something which is extremely rudimentary or basic of the human mind in ways that academic art and advanced forms produced by a trainer never could. Which means the thing that he is, like a kid is producing using his base kid is producing something basic, extremely rudimentary, extremely basic, and the thing that he is producing cannot be produced by an artist, trained artist. Why? Because maybe what the kid is producing, this is special in itself, it's unique. So the value he is producing cannot be judged by an artist itself. So the art piece or the value or anything, the object that the kid has produced also contain a significant value as an artist is producing. You can say a highly trained artist is producing. And this, as author has said, our author has definitely said this option. So this is also not the option of our answer. Content of our answer goes to A. So A is the answer to this question. Now let's look at the last question itself. Which of the following options, if true, which is positive, suppose the author conclusion that is positive? So positive, we need a positive. So we need a question which is in sync with the passage, which supports the author's conclusion. The the recent democratization is marked by a decline in the standards of education and failures of taste inculcating institutions. The first thing is that there is no talk of decline in standards of education and failures of taste inculcating institutions. There is literally no talk about that, and this is, you know, say, hypothetical question. And we know, in if there is democratization in real democracy, everybody would get a choice. You know it. The author has said in real democracy everybody would get a choice, whether that person is snobbish or he is seeing everything undiscriminately. So this is definitely false itself, so this is not an option. The term culture can be objectively defined if we try. What is the meaning of objective? Objective, which means something which is true. You can say only one thing. Specifically here objectively can be used that only one definition. Yeah, let's say if I have to define something called as biology, there is only one definition of biology, the stated definition of biology. So the definition of biology is objective. So you can't define, you can say, culture objectively, because if you define culture to be objectively, there is only one definition. So that is wrong in itself. Art is subjective, isn't it? So this is also wrong. You can't define art or culture objectively. The producers of bland art participates in the very acting of giving significance to a form that might please the beholder. Absolutely. This is the option. It has been stated in the paragraph itself, isn't it, that those who are producing simpler arts, or you can say bland arts, the things that they are also producing also contain inherent value. The same as who are producing, you can say, exceptionally complex art. This has been mentioned in the first paragraph itself, if you remember it clearly, that wait a minute. There is something comforting than therapeutic about the loop of no frills beat, the repetition of age-old platitudes, familiar plot lines, and modest shapes and color in configuration we recognize. Must every piece a masterpiece? Hardly. It is best to surround ourselves with cultural objects of varying complexity and purpose. Sometimes we need objects that challenges. Other times we need objects that just let us coast. So this is also said. You know, there has been a mention. I'm just looking at that. Yeah, here it is. It was not in the first paragraph. It is in the last paragraph itself. This is the thing. At any given moment across this vast spinning orb on which we live, artists, writers, and thinkers are producing rudimentary objects and complex ones artifacts that make no particular skill or thought to make in others, that require specialized knowledge and years of training, reflection, and preparation. For each taste, there are objects and ideas to accommodate it. So, definitely, even bland art has value in it. There is inherent value in it. So, this is our option, or the contender for our answer. Let's check the option for D. Degeneration is associated with more complex form. Like, this doesn't make sense, because art is not degenerating, and this is not, you can say, author is not talked about degeneration, isn't it? He is talking about art, and specifically art, the context of art in here. So this is definitely, you can say, alien option itself. So the option to this question, the answer to this question is B option.